Hello, and welcome to another edition of Crunch and Chaos. I'm your host, Nick, and across the virtual table for me is Jay.
Hey, everybody.
Today we're going to do this remotely. We couldn't really get together in person, so we're going to try this out digitally, and hopefully it goes well. Last time we had some technical difficulties that made things interesting. So we've been gone for a couple weeks. Life got a little crazy, and we weren't able to get an episode. Jay's over there grumbling.
Yeah, life got a little crazy. Yep.
So in our last episode, we talked about house discs, and we pre-record episodes. So we pre-recorded that a couple weeks before, and about 2 days before that episode came out, there was a rules change, and we completely forgot that we talked about stuff that was changed with those rules. So with that rule change, we talked about how if you have Resurgentus and Pit Lord and Control the Weak, if you have some combination of those, and there's another card that I can't think of right off the bat, you can be locked out of the game. Okay, so that's not true with this rules change. And the rules change is basically in cannot versus must, cannot takes precedence over must. So the example they put in the rules is that if I control Pit Lord and my opponent plays Control the Weak, Pit Lord is you must choose house discs, and Control the Weak is your opponent chooses a house and you cannot play that house. Wait. No, I have that wrong.
Okay. Perfect.
Let's just read the example word for word, because So it's Anna controls the Pit Lord, which reads, while Pit Lord is in play, you must choose house disc as your active house. On the next turn, her opponent plays Resurgentus, which reads, play, choose a house. Your opponent cannot choose that house. So basically in this rule is you have Pit Lord in play, you must choose house disc. Your opponent says you cannot play house disc, you're locked out of the game. Now cannot takes precedent over must, so only Resurgentus takes effect. So you now just cannot choose house disc. You can choose either of your other two houses. That's the new rule, which is good. It's actually something that they usually have in their games, or at least in most games, is a cannot versus must clause. So we're cleared up with that. Let's talk about some new stuff. And with some new stuff, they announced a brand new set, which is fun, because about a month ago, you and I were talking. I'm just like, they're going to announce a new set within the next month or two here. And lo and behold, they announced a new set. It just sort of fits with the normal release schedule of most games. This is a bit longer. I don't know if this is always going to be the release schedule. If it's going to be like every 6 months, we're going to get 2 sets a year. That doesn't seem like very often, but this game is also really different. So the other really, really interesting thing is we're getting the exact same houses, and they're just replacing about half of the cards. And most of those cards are going to be common. So most of the rares and most of the uncommons are coming back. You're going to get the same ones as in Call of the Archons. But in this new set, Age of Ascension, most of the commons, if not all of the commons, are going to be replaced, which is really interesting, because as I've played over the past few months over and over and over again, you constantly see the same cards because commons are common, and you see them very commonly. But the rares, like there's some that I'll be playing a game and I was like, I've never seen that card. And uncommons that are in the same thing. They're uncommons I've never played with because I've never had them in a deck.
Yeah, and what is it? It's that they're keeping 166 from the first set and adding 204 or something like that for 370, right?
Yes.
For all new cards. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Which is also interesting because it's 370 cards in the original set. I believe that's the number, but that includes all of the sort of add-on cards, like Help from Future Selves comes with Time Traveler, or the Four Horsemen. You get Pestilence and you get the other three. So are those some of the rares they're keeping? Are they going to put in new rares that have new extra things like that? I'm hoping we get some new
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah, but they said so the attacks and abilities stays the same, right? On the reprints that they would put in this set,
Hmm.
but I guess that stuff could change, right?
Well, the cards they
So if
put
you
in
have a
change. They
new
could rotate out the four
no,
horsemen.
no, I mean
Oh yeah, keep going.
right, but what I'm saying is what could change is what activates in the code to put a grouping of cards together, right? So that could be different.
What do you mean? Like, give me an
So like
example.
right now, like if you put in time traveler, um you get what's it's
Help from
called
future
with it,
self.
right? Help from future self, right? So, there could be different combinations, I guess, with old cards or not old cards, but current cards we have that could now trigger other combos in the deck, which I think is kind of cool.
I see what you're saying, but I'm thinking of some examples of where that would happen because the ones that trigger other things, those cards are related somehow. Like even though Niffle Ape and Niffle Queen aren't one of those cards where they, if this card is in there, these cards must. Um, a Niffle Queen will come with at least one Niffle Ape.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if they shake some of that up with, like I think they gave an example on their website. What was it? Witch of the Wilds was something that they'd be, does she come with something else now that we don't
Oh,
know
I see
about?
what you're
You know what I
saying.
mean? So,
If some of the
yeah.
cards they add trigger off of old cards.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
that's really interesting. I didn't think of that.
So, so a card that you may know and like was just kind of not a throwaway, but just something that got added into the mix now is part of a different combo set that triggers, a bunch of the new cards or something like that. Yeah, that's what I was kind of interested in.
I'm also interested in is so the way you and I sort of consume this game is I have 20 decks. I didn't go out and buy boxes and boxes and boxes, and I have rows and rows of decks and things like that. The people who did, are they now upset? I haven't seen any chatter about it, but are they now upset that like, well, I went out and I bought all of these cards because I wanted a taste of everything, and now you're going to put out this new set that gives me a taste of more of the same thing.
Yeah, do you think though, I felt like I hear you and I thought about that too, but then that what is it, the vault tour for the where the amber, I think maybe that kind of gives you a purpose for buying more decks,
You mean to
right?
get Amber
Because
in
every
the app
time,
to buy stuff from the
yeah,
prize
because you
wall?
registered all your decks,
Hmm.
right? So you probably got a bunch of amber in the master vault system, and so maybe now that amber can get you a t-shirt or
Yeah,
something
because I
or a
imagine
mat.
those things are going to be expensive. Or like the one example they put in a gaming chair with a house symbol on it,
Right,
which has got to
right.
be several hundreds of keys worth of Amber in the app.
Somebody pointed out the other day to me that it was kind of like I think it's in the 90s Pepsi did something similar, whereas like if you collected so many points like you could get a Harrier jet. You know what I
Oh yeah,
mean?
I've
And
heard
like
about
of
this.
course there's somebody that's going to try to do that.
There was a
Um
guy who
so
was a millionaire who wanted a jet anyway and figured out that it would actually be cheaper to just buy tons and tons of Pepsi and collect caps than it would be to just buy a jet.
yeah, so I wonder is it is it the same like with this? There's going to be those people that are like I'm going to buy 5 cases of Keyforge to get the amber so that I can get the chair or whatever crazy thing that they come out
Or
with.
the chair ends up being cheaper because of that, or they could buy all those decks, resell them, get most of their money back, and then use the amber to buy a chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of work
So I
for a
was
chair,
trying to.
though.
So, anyways, that's a long way around to your question of do I think people will be upset? I think you'll have some that'll be upset that heavily invested into this first, but I mean, no, maybe a little bit of offense to those people, but why were you buying cases of this game to begin with?
Yes. I mean, I almost went
That's
down that path,
right.
and But then I thought about it, and it's like, this is not how I want to consume this game. I want to
Right.
get decks and I want to play with them either immediately or soon so that I can experience them. I don't want to have piles and piles of decks that I've never played and will never have enough time to play, and then just have that like wanting sitting there. I just have
Yeah.
20 decks. I've played all but one or two of them, because there was one that I got as prize support, and then I looked at it and I didn't like it, and I'm just like, I don't want to play this, and it's still wrapped in shrink wrap. But other than that, every deck I've played with many times because I want to experience these decks.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a couple different types of people that bought cases and cases. I think there's the people that just wanted to buy the game into the game, and get as much as they can, and I'm sure they're going to do the same thing with this next set as well. But then I think there's the people that were trying to find the best deck or whatever by buying cases and cases, and I think those people might be a little bit more upset, that the new set is out. Um,
Like I said, depends on how
but
well
you
they.
know what?
If they're buying those decks or trying to get those decks for tournaments and they do well in those tournaments and that's their goal, then maybe they won't be upset about that.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. And then it would be interesting to see, how I'm sure they thought of this, but this new set is supposed to be evenly matched, with the original set, so you don't even actually have to buy new decks from the new set to be competitive, right? So
Correct.
maybe those people that bought 2, 3 cases or whatever people bought, maybe that's enough for them, and they have a really, they have like a top 3 decks that they have that are really strong, even against the new sets.
I see what you're saying. They're over there like, I'll show you. You re-release the same cards. Well, I'm just going to win with these decks. I'll show you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it's interesting.
I'm excited because
Yeah.
like this fits so well with how I am playing this game, how I'm consuming this game. It's just like, oh, sweet. I just get to keep trying to get those cards that I want to play with, that I haven't played with, without putting in maximum amount of effort, and I get to play with new cards on top of that, and I get those interactions too. So even if I get the same rare or same group of rares that I got with the deck previously, well, all these commons are different, and they're going to interact differently, and they're going to play differently.
Yeah, and it's kind of not that I don't think like you were saying earlier, I think there's still some stuff that surprises us when we play. But I think for the most part, like when you see somebody call a house, you have a good idea of what's about to happen. Especially if this is like turn 3 or 4, like you're kind of going, okay, yeah, I know what's coming next.
You call
Um,
shadows, you're going to steal from me. If you call
yeah,
untamed, you're
yeah.
going to bust out a ton of amber.
Yeah, and so I think it'll be nice to start playing against decks or to experience decks and not know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, because
Like,
what's going to be coming up, what we're going to be talking about in future episodes, is we're going to sort of refocus and talk about more focus on the commons, for various reasons. We'll talk about that in the next episode. And changing the commons could shake up the entire house, and the entire house could play differently with different commons.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so moving on. Um, we spent an entire episode talking about ADHD, ABCE. Well, since then, there has been a new player on the block, and then there's an old player that we didn't talk about. So the new player on the block is SAS. This is from dexofkeyforge.com. I believe that's the website, and it gives this is another uh website that rates your deck. This one is different in that the SAS rating is actually a value of how good your deck is, where with ADHD, it was it assigned values to specific attributes of your deck and then gave a consistency rating based on those um based on those ratings. So it didn't actually tell you how good your deck is, because the consistency, which is what those four attributes add up to, doesn't actually tell you your deck is good or not. And a really great example of this is one of the decks that I play like crazy now. It's if you want to look it up, it's wounding snake in quotation marks Tycho, Tycho, and it in ADHD its consistency rating was okay. It was in the positive, but it wasn't anything stellar. It was like 0.3 or something like that, or 0.03. And but the SAS in SAS rating, it's an 84. It's actually my highest rated deck. And 84 isn't amazing, but it is solid. And it's interesting because um, when I first heard about ADHD, I went through all my decks, and this was a deck that sort of like sat on my peripheral vision. It's like a deck I like to play. It felt good when I played it, but the consistency rating was low. It had weaknesses. It has really weak board control, I believe. Um, but it was always like, I'm still going to keep this in my three very playable decks because this one feels good, and I trust my instincts and my playstyle and my experience with the deck over just what a website says based on someone's opinion. And then I
Yeah.
go into SAS and I plug it in. It's my highest rated deck. It's like, oh, this sort of makes sense. I don't necessarily agree that it's my best deck, but it's definitely one of my top ones. And the more I play it, the better I do with it, and the more consistent it feels. The more I feel like I'm
Hmm.
in a game than some other decks that are lower rated, that it's just like it's sort of like a crapshoot, or if I get the right cards it goes well, or if my opponent has a weaker deck I do really well.
So now what are they based? So what is their system based off of, and like what's a good rating?
So first of all, a solid rating is 80 and up. I would say
Okay.
right around 85 is solid. Anything above that is really good. The average deck falls at about 75ish, and they just rate each card as to how good it is. uh I forgot exactly what it's called, but it's just your card is rated at this, and your deck has a rating of how good those cards are, and then it has a synergy rating that adds to the overall rating. So
Okay.
those combined give you your SAS rating. It also then has your rating for the cards in your deck, synergy, and then you get points shaved off for anti synergy. So for non combos, and those together make up your SAS rating. And it's fairly accurate. It's not perfect. The only way that it's going to be perfect, the only perfect rating system is if you go out there and you play it and you find a deck that not only performs well but fits your playstyle as well.
Yeah.
Now, the third rating system we did not talk about is Burger Token. They have their own rating system, but this is not actually a rating system. This is just raw data. So you plug in your deck, and it just gives you stats based on the other decks that have been registered in the vault. So it'll, like the number of
Hmm.
creatures, the number of actions, how much amber it gains, uh, artifact control, just raw stats that you can just see by looking at the card text of the cards in your deck. And this one's good just to have a view of what your deck is and how it stacks against other decks. It doesn't really tell you if it's good or bad, but if your deck is in the positive in all of these fields, well then you're probably better than any deck that's below it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, it's like with anything, like any other kind of game, like you have, just to relate it a little bit, like you have the meta or whatever, and the meta may work for some people, but maybe it doesn't work for you. So maybe there's a deck that's highly rated that you have, but it just doesn't make sense to your play style or how you approach the game.
Exactly. Or it just doesn't, yeah, it doesn't play the way you want to play, which is
Yeah.
great because then you can just sell that deck to somebody who wants that deck for that play style, and you can make a bit of a
Right.
profit on it.
Yeah.
So, three rating systems that I know of: SAS, ADHD, Burger Token. And again, Burger Token is not a rating system. Um, ADHD is really nice for those specific elements because it's really nice to know that, hey, my deck is weak on board control, and you play and it's like, this is weak on board control. I can see that now, and I can adjust my playstyle based on that. And then SAS rating, which also gives you stats based on other decks, is just the best that I found for just like, okay, this one's rated higher than this one. This deck is better. It's not perfect,
Yeah.
but it's good.
So do you think, is there any for you, is there any like let's you I can use all of these kind of examples, like all three websites to come up, like let's say I don't know. Let's say I haven't found my play style yet. Is there like a formula to using these three websites or something that could get you in the right path?
If you just want quick and dirty and not have to play, I would just use SAS because the with ADHD, it's horribly inconsistent versus what the consistency rating is. Because basically, the consistency rating is their stats that they're measuring by combined together, and it gives you this rating. That is not
Okay.
accurate as to how good your deck is at all. Because I
Okay.
have decks that are rated really high in their consistency, but you play them and they don't do very well because they actually end up not being very consistent when you play them. They kind of
Okay.
be the ones that I played have been kind of all over the place, and they they can be powerful if you have the right cards, but if you don't get the right setup, the deck doesn't do anything, but it does have power stuff in it.
Yeah. Now, do you think the anti-synergy that the SAS system has, is that helpful, you think?
Um,
Does that prove anything to you when you're looking at it as a player? Like when you read it and you see, oh shoot, I
Not
got
really, because
anti-synergy here.
I don't put much stock in their anti synergy because if you go into the details of the deck, it will tell you why it was rated as anti synergistic, and some of it doesn't make sense. Like some of
Hmm.
the cards
Okay.
make sense. Like if you have Protect the Weak, it's a card out of Sanctum upgrade. Put it on a character. It gives you an amber. That character gets +1 armor and taunt. Now it's saying
Okay.
if you have a large creature count, it gives it an anti synergy rating, which isn't terribly accurate. It's like it means that at some point you might have it in your hand and there isn't a creature to play it on. But generally speaking, if you play it on any creature, it will make that creature better. It just may not be amazing in that situation for what the card could do, which is you put it on a big giant creature and suddenly it has taunt.
Yeah.
But to say that's an anti synergy, I don't feel that way. Now, a good
Hmm.
example of a definite anti synergy that the deck that SAS does point out is one of my other decks. It has three Earthshakers out of Brobnar, or two Earthshakers out of Brobnar, which is 7 power creature. When it comes into play, it destroys all 3 power creatures or less. But it also has a War
Okay.
Drummer, and War Drummer is 3 power. You put into play, you return all Brobnar creatures in play to your hand. So this is very much a nombo where if you play War Drummer, you return Earthshaker to your hand. But if you play that Earthshaker again, it's going to destroy your War Drummer. That's a
Hmm.
very anti synergy. And it does point that out, but I think it also points out things that I wouldn't necessarily consider anti synergy,
Hmm.
which also probably means that some of the synergy stuff isn't as synergistic as it could be. I haven't actually really looked into that.
Yeah, I mean, and part of this too, it all depends on who you're playing, right? And what they're capable of doing with their deck as well.
Well, yeah. If your opponent doesn't play well and you have a bad deck, even with the anti synergies, you're probably still going to beat them if you are a good player.
Yeah.
So, sort of to go to play off of this, you and I have been playing for a while. So, what do we feel makes a good deck? And I will start because I've been actually
Okay.
thinking about this for a while. And for me, the 2 decks that I play, the biggest thing about them, and this is something that's kind of true of every single game you play ever, every single game that's out there, and it is consistency. And not the ADHD consistency, just consistency in general, in that uh, gaining amber versus controlling amber, um, being able to play threats versus being able to answer threats. So if your deck can do all 4 of those things, and it can do all 4 of those things when you need it to do it, it can consistently come up with those answers or those threats, then your deck is going to perform well. So one of my favorite decks, that Wounding Snake Tycho, whenever I feel like I need to control my opponent's amber, it has so many cards in it that actually do that, that I usually have one, or I at least have one in archive that I can use. When I need to kill a creature, it's able to kill a creature. And then all the cards in it are very threatening when you play them. So it's like I'm always putting down threat.
Yeah, I guess for me, like one of the things that I try to look at when I'm looking at my deck is just raw amber gain. So just the cards that gain you amber by playing them. That usually is a tell for me on how I'm gonna do with that card. And then, then the next thing I look at is what kind of control am I gonna have over amber? And between those two things, I think you have a pretty good idea, of um
What your deck is capable of
what your deck's gonna
is the
look
best way to
like.
put it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and consistency isn't really something that I feel people have talked about all that much, because this deck is basically, the nature of this deck is inconsistency. Like, it's all random,
Yeah.
but there are enough cards that do similar things that you can find consistency. They do it differently, but they're accomplishing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sanctum has Doorstep to Heaven, which is action, you gain an amber. Each player with 6 or more amber goes down to 5 amber. It's just a great amber control, which can control amber just as well, if not better, than say bait and switch, which is just super popular out of shadows. I'm not even going to talk about what bait and switch does. If you play Keyforge and you are listening to this podcast, you probably know what that card does. Um, so across your houses, you can have amber gain, the amber control, the threatening cards, and the answers to threats. And if you have those all in a good enough uh, volume, I guess is a way to put it, then your deck's going to do well. Also, when it comes to amber gain, the best decks that I have do it effortlessly. Like, decks that have to reap in order to really be able to gain amber generally aren't good. If you're just able to play the game and not even have to worry about whether or not you're gaining amber because you're just gaining amber from playing the game, that's exactly what you want. So about 24 to 25 amber you should just get just from playing cards without having to reap or do anything extra to do that. That feels like a good number to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think that's it for me. As far as like the amber and amber control, I think that's pretty interesting. Oh, you know what? I did want to bring one thing up. I found interesting. So, a buddy of mine and we were at a store recently, and we bought some decks. I think we got like 6 between the two of us, just because I wanted to have a couple extra. And we ended up opening 3 Horseman decks right in a row.
3 4 horseman decks.
Yeah, 3 4 Horseman
That is
deck.
crazy.
Yep, it was crazy.
Out of half of a box.
Yeah,
So
and I mean the decks
realistically, there could have been more in that
out of
box.
yeah,
It could have just been a 4 horseman box.
yeah, yeah. I don't know how it works. I don't, and I mean we just bought a few, and I couldn't believe it. Now I looked at the 2 that I got. He got 1, I got 2. They're all right. There's nothing.
Yeah, I
Um,
was looking at your deck list. Like, they're all right.
they're all right. The horsemen are interesting, but once again, I think we've talked about this before. I don't think they're make or break a deck at all. I think they're just okay to have. It's a lot of board control versus other control. So it's I don't know. It depends on the rest of the deck. I think with most of those.
It definitely depends on the rest of it. Because some 4 horseman decks, the 4 horsemen don't work with a lot of what Sanctum wants to
Yep.
do, but there are cards that they do work really well with, like cleansing wave might be I don't remember the name of the card. The card that you heal 1 from each creature,
Oh yeah, and then
and then you
combo
gain
that.
an amber for each. Yes, you combo that with
Yep.
pestilence, where you just do that every turn and you just gain massive amounts of
Yeah,
amber.
and then there's the monk.
That's a really good
Right, the
combo.
monk plays well with the horseman. Um,
Yep. With that same horseman with
yeah,
pestilence, because you can everything has an armor, so you hit pestilence and then you just hit their creatures and not your
yep.
own.
Yeah, so it's I like I said, it's so for me it was exciting because it's my first. They were both my first horseman decks, and yeah, they're okay. I played one. Actually, I played both now. I played all both of them, and I don't know. They felt slow to me. They weren't very quick. The decks that I have, so they were. I would rank them in like the middle of where my decks are. So I've played most of my decks now because I don't have that many, and so I rank them right around the middle.
So now some things that don't work well with the horseman are like something like protect the weak,
Yep.
which gives your creature taunt and armor that's necessarily not what you want your horsemen to be used for. They're not usually there to protect people. They're usually there to
Yep.
kill things. And I think that'll probably end up doing it for us this week. So this is Nick and Jay with Crunch and Gas, and everybody take it easy.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.